Hello Peach! I hope you're having a lovely day today. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a breastfeeding cap. I do have a written version of this pattern on my website, theproductivepeach.com. I also have an ad-free version for sale on my Etsy and my Ravelry, and I'll have all of that linked below in the description. First, let's gather the materials we're going to be using. You're going to need some fiber fill, a stitch counter, a 5mm crochet hook, a tape measure, which is optional, a tapestry needle, and 2 tones of yarn, one for the breast and one for the nipple. You're also going to need a few stitch markers and, of course, some scissors. To begin, you're going to want to start off by making a slip knot. If you need a slowed down tutorial of this, I do have one on all of my socials, including my YouTube channel. Once you make that slip knot, you're going to start your magic ring. I also have a slowed down step-by-step tutorial of this on all of my socials as well. I will leave a link to both of those more in-depth tutorials in the description down below. Once you understand the magic circle method, you're going to place 8 half double crochets in your magic circle, just as I have done here. After you have those 8, you're going to close the magic circle by pulling on the tail. Once it is pulled as tight as it can be, you're going to close the circle by placing a slip stitch in the first half double crochet of the magic circle. You are not going to crochet in the chain space. I'm going to slow this down for you so you can really see what I'm doing. Quick side note, you are going to see me pull the tail of the magic circle a few times throughout the video to keep the ring tight. Don't worry about it becoming loose once we have finished though. When we weave in that tail later, it will stop loosening itself. So once you have closed that up, you're going to want to chain 2, and then you're going to put 2 half double crochets in that same stitch you just slip stitched into in order to close the ring. And then you're going to place 2 half double crochets in every single stitch around, and that is going to give you 16 in total for round 2. Now you'll see here where I put the last half double crochet. I know it looks like you need to place one more stitch to finish the round, but the part I am pointing to is not a stitch. You're going to want to close your round at this point by placing a slip stitch into the first half double crochet of round 2. Just like how we closed round 1, you do not want to go into the chain space, but in the half double crochet itself. After you have placed a slip stitch into that first half double crochet of round 2, you're going to chain 2 again to begin round 3. But here's where things are going to differ between odd and even rounds. After you've chained 2, you're not going to crochet in the same stitch you just placed your slip stitch in to close round 2. You're going to skip over that stitch and go into the next one. Since this is an increase round, you're going to place 2 stitches there and then 1 in the following, and you'll repeat the pattern all the way around. Once you get to the end of the round, things are going to differ again from how you ended round 2. So when you're working the even rounds, this would be where you want to end, like I showed you before in round 2. But on the odd rounds, that's not the case. Because we skipped that first half double crochet when we started round 3, this is where we're going to place the last half double crochet of the round. The reason we're doing it this way is to create a straight seam for the hat. Oftentimes when you work in the round, the seam will sort of start to curve, unless you incorporate a technique to pull the end of the round back to where you started. So this method I'm showing you will give you a straight seam because there is a back and forth pull of each round. To put it in simpler terms, when you're working odd number rounds, you're going to skip the first stitch at the start of the round and place your first stitch in the second stitch of the round, and then finish the round in the first stitch you skipped at the beginning. Alternately, when you're working the even rounds, you'll start in that first stitch and end on the last stitch. Once you have a few more increase rounds, this is what your seam is going to look like. It's very straight and almost discreet. Because of this, we're going to continue that method for each round for the remainder of the hat. I recorded myself making the baby/toddler version of this hat for the video, so I crocheted a total of 14 rounds of 56 half double crochets with no increases. In the written pattern, this is rows 12 through 25. However, I do have instructions for different sizes in the written pattern. I have a size guide which includes infant, baby, toddler, child, average adult, and large adult sizes. This next step I'm going to show you is optional because it is going to give you a bit of a tighter brim. I did a slip stitch around the entire brim of the hat to finish off. I know that isn't necessarily comfortable for everyone, so don't feel like you have to do this step. It is perfectly fine to just end on a half double crochet row, or if you just want a slightly tighter brim, but not necessarily as tight as a slip stitch brim, you can finish off with a single crochet row. Here is what that seam is going to look like now, and I'm just going to finish off there and weave in that end. Make sure that you flip the hat inside out when you're weaving in your ends, just to make sure that it can't be seen. I'm going to slow down this next part because it can get a little confusing. I always make a sewing knot before I weave in my ends, and I know not everyone does this, but I'm an overly anxious person, so I like to put one final knot in the work before I weave the ends in. To do this, I find somewhere nearby to place my needle through to create a loop, and then I put my needle through that loop which I just made. After that, I'm going to pull the first loop I made closed. So now I only have one loop open, and I'm going to go through that loop now and pull it closed just as I did the first one. Finally, you're going to pull the needle to close that final loop. I do this because it keeps everything tight and reassures me that the piece will remain secure once I have that very tight knot. Then I will actually begin to weave in the ends. To do this, you're going to want to perform a back and forth motion through the stitches, which is going to secure the tail while also keeping it discreet. And I'm going to do that back and forth motion a few times. Finally, once I feel I have weaved in enough of the tail, I'm going to clip the remainder and then move on to weave in the tail of the magic circle, which I almost forgot to do, which is why you see the pink yarn on the bottom, because I had already finished the nipple and placed it with the stitch markers at this point, but I moved this part of the video forward so you wouldn't do the same thing. Once you have both ends weaved in, this is what your cap is going to look like. To start the nipple, it's going to be a little different from the start of the hat itself, but similar. Instead of 8 half double crochets in the magic ring, you're going to place 5 single crochets in the magic ring. Once you have that closed with a slip stitch, you're going to want to start round 2 of the nipple by chaining 1 and placing 2 single crochets in that first single crochet of the first round, and then continue that in each stitch around, which is going to give you 10 single crochets total in your second round. After that second round of 10 stitches, you're going to crochet 2 more rounds that will have 10 stitches. So it's going to be 1 single crochet in each stitch around for 2 rounds. These 3 rounds of 10 are what's going to give you the dome shape of the nipple itself. After you have your 3 rounds of 10 is when you're going to start to increase again, just as you would have had you not done those additional 2 rounds of 10 single crochets. Because this is round 5, you're going to start your round by skipping the first stitch and placing 2 single crochets in the second stitch. Then you will place 1 single crochet in the next stitch and continue that pattern for the rest of the round. After a few more increase rounds, you're going to see how the nipple starts to flay out to replicate an areola. Keep in mind, you're going to continue to use the method I taught you earlier to create a straight seam. Once you finish the areola, this is what the nipple top is going to look like. After this, make sure that you cut an extra long tail at the end, because this is what you're going to use to sew it to the top of your hat. Before you do that though, you're going to want to flip that nipple inside out because you're going to weave in the tail of your magic circle. I will start by once again utilizing my sewing stitch just like I showed you before on the hat brim, and then I'm going to weave in the ends. When it comes to weaving in the ends of the magic circle, you're going to want to weave back and forth in a circle, clockwise, then counterclockwise, clockwise, then counterclockwise, and that's going to keep the tail secure. Once you finish weaving in the tail from the magic circle of the nipple, you don't need to cut it off. You can just stuff the remaining tail inside the nipple portion, since you're going to fill it with fiber fill anyways. Now, you're going to clip the nipple to the hat using the stitch markers. My nipple lined up perfectly with round 4 of the hat itself. Again, I'm making the baby/toddler size. If your tension is different though, it might not line up the same way. The most important thing is just to make sure that the nipple lies flat and center on the top of the hat. Whether it lines up perfectly with a specific round of the hat or not isn't as important. Now I'm going to take my long tail and stitch the edge of the areola to the hat itself, almost all the way around. But make sure you leave a little bit of space because you're going to put some fiber fill right in that nipple tip. You can kind of see with this view that it's a little bit flat, so the fiber fill is going to fill it out a little bit more. So don't go all the way around. Make sure that you leave an opening before you finish off. I've put some fiber fill right in that space you see there, and I'm going to finish it off. Now, you don't want the nipple to look like a pyramid, and you're going to want to keep that fiber fill in place. So to do that and make sure you have a defined nipple and areola, You're going to stitch around the base of the nipple portion where the nipple meets the areola. This is going to be about round 5 of the nipple when we started to crochet the increase again. Once you've stitched all around the base of the nipple, you're going to weave in the rest of that tail into the inside of the hat. Cut the remainder, and you have your finished hat. I really hope that you all enjoyed this tutorial. Please be sure to leave me some feedback in the comments, like the video, hype it, and if you're feeling peachy, hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of my new crochet tutorials. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.